Hey everybody, welcome on in to Sports Live in the 215. Well, actually, technically not really Sports Live in the 215. This will just be posted on the Sports Live in the 215 YouTube channel. That's right, we have another episode of my life for you guys. It's been a while since we posted the last one. I got a lot of great comments on the last one. Thank you for all the support. So I figured because of all that amazing support, figured I would bring it back. This episode we will touch on years 2 through 10 in my life. So here we go. Uh, I started, after my whole heart issue got solved. I still had another couple years of being a baby slash toddler um, before going to Easter Seals at age 3. So 2, and then I turned 3 in the summer of 2005. Um, and then at age 3, I started preschool, and then age 4, I went to pre-K. At Easter Seals, which is where I went to preschool, I met um, 2 amazing people, or specifically 2 amazing people. I met my childhood best friend, Dominic, and I met one of my absolute favorite teachers of all time, my preschool teacher, Miss Julie, who I still keep in touch with to this day. And I'll forever be grateful to Easter Seals for that. And they also introduced me to a whole new world of just socialization outside of my home. And um, they also introduced me to um, like physical and occupational therapy, which is where I met my first occupational therapist. His name was Michael. And he taught one of the first things he taught me was how to use a fork. Um, and I can remember having, this is actually a funny story. I can remember having like my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches cut up in like small pieces, so I'd be like forced to use a fork. He um he'd always tell me like make sure you stab it right in the middle, nice and hard, so it stays on the fork. And that's just a story that it still sticks with me to this day. Um, and I'm grateful to say I've talked to Michael pretty recently, and I stay in touch with Miss Julie. Um, and yeah, she's A1 class personified. As for my friend Dominic, um, he was really my first best friend, and as always, Miss Julie would always say when describing us, that that we would she that we would ham it up. She'd always say, "Uh oh, there's Dominic and Connor hamming it up again," and I just man, I just really appreciate those times. And as for Dominic, like I didn't stay in touch with him, and I found out from his nurse who was with him ever since we were in pre-K and preschool, that he passed away due to complications from COVID. at the tender age of 23. He's like a year older than me, so that was hard. But at least now I feel like I have a guardian angel, and I can still kind of talk to him whenever I want. I don't mean to alienate those of you guys that aren't religious, but that's just how I feel. And anyway, so I went to Widener from the 07-08 school year to the to partway through the 13 and 14 school year. So kindergarten all the way up until 5th grade. And I went to school I went to school with a bunch of people I had come into Easter Seals with, including Dominic. So it was it was awesome to get to kind of um, kind of stay with him and keep this thing rolling, and um and having him stay with or having him what am I trying to say? Having Miss Donetta come with us was really cool. I mean, she was his nurse, but you know what I mean. So I felt like kind of the band was sticking together, and obviously I couldn't articulate it that well at the time, seeing as I was only 5 years old. But at Widener, um, one of my first days at kindergarten, I met my other childhood best friend. Um, his name was Khalid, and he and I were just inseparable from the moment we met to the moment I left Widener midway through 5th grade. Um, that guy, that guy and I, as well as me and Dom, were just we were we were thick as thieves, as my mom would say. Um, but yeah, it's just those first childhood friendships were really important for me, and they were pretty integral. And um like even though I haven't done as great of a job staying in touch with those guys, meaning Dom when he was still on Earth, and Khalid for a while, the all those both those guys are still in my heart. Um, yeah, like Widener, I met a bunch of amazing people. I met I'm I met some more great therapists, um, and some incredible teachers. Um, all my favorite teacher probably at Widener was my 2nd grade teacher, Miss Leslie, because well, partially because she was a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, and anybody who even looks at the name of this podcast and the logo knows where I stand on the sports front. So to kind of rip her from because she was originally from Pittsburgh and a Penguins fan living in Philly, it was pretty cool. And um yeah, it always made me laugh, and I I'm sure it made her laugh too. And around I want to say I want to say I was maybe um God, I'm not even sure, but I want to say I was maybe 4 or 5 when Tommy started playing competitive sports. For reference, my brother is or maybe he was even 5. I was probably like 3. I was maybe he was 5 when he started playing t-ball and flag football. But my like at at that point, I didn't realize it at the time, but sports would have a really big impact on my life, and yeah, um, and as Tommy grew older and the T was swapped out for an actual pitcher in baseball, and the flags for flag football were swapped out for pads and a helmet. Um, my, we we met our we actually both already knew our 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 little league baseball coach. He was the biggest jerk in the world. Um, and if if he's watching this episode, I just want to say, hey, Dad, how you doing? I love you. No, I'm kidding. He was my favorite, probably my favorite baseball coach, tied with my 2 college coaches, which we'll get to that. But anyway, yeah, like I realized just the camaraderie, and the teamwork, that sports taught me. Like even though I couldn't play like a single competitive inning, like I I could take away the lessons from sports that my um my 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 like I don't want to say able-bodied, but my non-disabled brother could, even though I wasn't out on those fields, you know what I mean? Um, so that's just such a cool thing about sports. Hold on one second. Let me get my foot up. I apologize. That's something I'm working on. Not throwing my hips out when I get excited and when I talk. Um, so yeah, it's a work in progress, and I'm excited to have you guys watch me get better at some of these physical things. But anyway, oh yeah, where was I? Oh yes, sports having just this incredible impact on me, um, and kind of in relation to sports. Um, well, not before we get to that, I was able to watch the Phillies win the World Series in 2008, and right before Eric Hinsky, I want to say right before either he came up or right before Brad Lidge threw that final slider to get him out, my dad said to me, my my dad said to me, Connor, after the after the parade, we're gonna or after the game, we're gonna go to a parade. And me being 6 years old, I didn't know what that meant. Um, and he was like after the. I was like, oh, when? He said after the game. I was like, and then I was like, oh, cool. So then when Brad Lidge threw that final slider to strike out Eric Hinsky, I let out the highest pitch girl scream. You know, I was like, I can't do it now. My voice is too low. But I let out the biggest freaking squeal. Oh my god, you would have thought a pig died. Um but yeah, that was just one of the coolest moments of my early life. And oh yeah, I knew I missed one thing in the Easter Seals chapter of this story. I had or Easter Seals as an organization had something called the Walk with Me, where people will people will run for certain disabled youth, and they make donations. It's a really good cause, and I was the honorary ambassador for it. I want to say that was when I was 3 or 4. I forget which year that was. Um, but yeah, that was pretty cool. And every year that we attended the Walk with Me, I would always have a race with either my, like, I forget if it was my dad or my mom, and or I think it was my mom. And my dad would always, like, he'd always be on me to like stand up tall, like what, um like make sure you're taking big steps, don't drag your feet. And I mean, if you really think about it, isn't that just a metaphor for life? Don't drag your feet. Shout out to Dad. I'm sorry for what I said earlier in this video. I love you, big guy. Um, but anyway, yeah. So that was cool. And then as I grew up, I started to, when I was actually staying in the same 3 to 4 year old range, I that's when I first got into professional wrestling, specifically WWE. Um, because like they were the biggest game in town, so to say. And my well, they still are, but like TNA was kind of TNA had just started the year I was born, and um yeah, there was no AEW at this point. Um, that wouldn't come till another like 14 or 15 years later. Um, but anyway, my first favorite pair of wrestlers were just were Carlito, um, just simply because he had apples on his wrestling trunks, and I was like, he likes apples, and I like apples. And then my my um, other original favorite wrestler was Bobby Lashley. J- like I didn't understand the first thing about wrestling at that point, but I just saw this guy as big as a brick outhouse, and when when he would spear somebody, which is a wrestling move where you just run and tackle the guy, you run and tackle the guy you're wrestling. Um, I was like, whoa, that's insane. Um, and yeah, it was really great that I got into wrestling. Plus, it didn't hurt that Tommy was into it as well. And speaking of Tommy, he had um two favorite wrestlers of his own. The second of which is far more interesting to his story, or far more interesting to this story. I mean, the first was John Cena. The second was Jeff Hardy. And so, anyway, Jeff Hardy had a brother. His name was Matt Hardy, and they were in a tag team called the Hardy Boys. And so since w- let me so since Tommy's favorite was Jeff, I decided my favorite wrestler would be Matt Hardy. So from that point on, Carlito and Bobby Lashley, I still thought they were cool, but because that's actually funny because Carlito's catchphrase is "I spit in the face," or at least it was. It was "I spit in the face of people who don't like to be cool." But anyway, I thought they were cool. But they weren't they weren't they weren't Matt or Jeff Hardy. Um, and plus, like, um, this is a hilarious story. I had a foam horse. Um, I I had a foam horse that I would sit on to, like, help me, like, try to work on my sitting balance. And um, so whenever me and or whenever Tommy and I would wrestle, and especially when we were doing tag team matches, we would always wrestle my foam horse. Um, like we'd be like we'd obviously be Matt and Jeff Hardy, and Tommy would put on his Jeff Hardy armbands, and I had a microphone, which that's a whole that's another story, because I saw it on I saw it on um I forget which show that was. I think it was called The Little Einsteins. Let's look it up, verify it. Um, but yeah, I was like, oh, that looks cool. So my dad, for one of the Christmases around that time, bought me a little microphone, and we used that if Tommy and I used that if we were doing what's called a wrestling promo, which is essentially a pre-match monologue. Or it doesn't even have to be pre-match, but the way we did it is we'd always do the promos before the matches. Like, we're like yeah, that probably makes sense. So, and if it doesn't, I'm sorry, but anyway. so he would he would put, like, the horse in my hands, if we or on my arms, and, like, I would give the horse Matt and Jeff Hardy's finishing move, or it's one of Jeff's finishing moves. It was Matt's only finishing move, called the Twist of Fate, and then I would roll the horse over, and then Tommy would jump off of our couch and do the Swanton Bomb, which was um Jeff Hardy's finishing move, where you 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 dive off the couch, or you dive off the top rope, and land on your opponent, or land on, like, whoever you're landing on, back first, and then he would pretend like he was pinning the horse, and we'd say 1, 2, 3, and we'd all jump up and celebrate, and do like the Hardys, like, their like little celebration. Yeah, it was childhood memories, man. Just those were incredible. And then um what else? What else? Let me fix my foot and then check back with my notes here. Oh, yeah, I had I had an incredible I had just an amazing number of wrestling action figures. A lot of them I still have. Like, I would have buckets full of just wrestling action figures, and I I loved those toys, and I loved WWE, loved wrestling, loved really sports in general, and and what made that love so so strong was because I was doing it together with Tommy. Um, before I jump on out of here, I want to um touch on Tommy's. I did briefly touch on Tommy's time with the Prospect Park Termites, which was his football organization that he was a part of in Prospect Park, which is where my dad grew up in Bucks County. But anyway, um, oh, I had one more thing, last and certainly not least. Um, I had a great babysitter um, by the name of Amanda, and she helped me tremendously. She helped me learn how to brush my teeth, how to like put my shirt on, how to like sit up by myself, how to walk down the stairs. She was instrumental in my development, not only physically but mentally and emotionally, like as a young person. So Amanda, um if you're listening to this podcast, shout out to you. I'll always have love for you. Um thank you for everything. Um and I just really want to thank you guys for listening to this. And as always, this has been, or as always, this is my life.